serious spirituality.
Not so serious spirituality.
Not so serious spirituality. We are your hosts. My name is Halina Schriefer.
And I'm Paul Narus.
And the whole point of this podcast is to talk about advanced spiritual topics with you. And so if you have any questions about what we're talking about or any topic suggestions, go ahead and get the comments and type that on in there. But today, we're talking about taking action when it comes to our spiritual journey, not sitting on the metaphorical couch, so to speak.
Or the toilet.
Or the toilet, yeah, for that matter. What do you find to be the toughest part of, I'll say, we'll start with getting up in the morning.
My
Have
bones.
you ever found that? Your bones. The limitation of the body.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's the more productive way of saying it.
No, but you're right. That is chance. So say more about that.
I don't know. Well, it depends. Because a lot of times, I'll wake up and I'll just still be tired or don't want to wake up just because it's comfy in there. But the getting out of bed part, that's where the bones come in,
Mm-hmm.
Just a general, I don't know how to describe it, more than pain in my feet and legs.
Yeah.
The second my feet hit the ground, I go, okay, just stand here for a minute and remember it's going to hurt all day.
And the body, I've had that struggle too. If I'm not feeling well or my energy is low or I didn't sleep very well, taking that first step to get out of bed in itself can be challenging. And we talked to a lot of community members who have chronic pain. So what do you do to counter that challenge?
Well, generally, it's just that I take a minute to just stand there. I can't jump into action. Otherwise, I guess there's an amount of fear that's involved in just falling down. But I don't want to do that. It's embarrassing.
You need one of those bars
Even
that they
if
have
I'm
by
the only
toilets,
one. Yeah.
Where like you get out, do they have that, like a getting out of bed bar?
Or I was
for
thinking more
middle-aged
like a
people?
lift for horses.
Oh yeah, that can work too. Time to get up.
Yeah, I don't know. I just like to pause for a few seconds after I get up, at least, just to reacclimate with my feet on the ground and getting ready to roll.
Yeah. My good friend Mark, and some of you may know Mark, who's a facilitator here during the spring to fall months, but
the nice
travels,
months.
Yeah, the nice months, but travels outside of Ohio during the winter months. But Mark has shared with me that before he gets out of bed, he says a prayer every morning, and the prayer is essentially waking up in gratitude and giving thanks for this breath in this other day and asking for guidance throughout the day, admitting, I know nothing of this day. Please use me as a channel for whatever mystery is ahead of me, and help me be connected to that. So I'm paraphrasing, by the way.
Oh, are you?
Yeah. It's intuitive.
I thought this was a script.
No, it's not scripted.
Oh.
Maybe it should be.
Because I was watching him do it in my head.
Yeah. But
Thanks.
But waking up in gratitude. And I think that's I think of the breath as this holy energy. And, the realization, when we wake up, it's ingrained in us for whatever reason, collectively sometimes that we wake up and it's oh, another day, or it's Monday or whatever it is. But if we can reprogram the mind to wake up with joy and gratitude of, oh, I'm in the body again, and oh, I've got this breath flowing and this life flowing. What's going to happen today? Being in that mystery, to me, that feels incredibly exciting versus, man, my back hurts, my legs hurt,
Well, sometimes
middle-age
they can
problems.
be the same thing, though. You can thank the pain for reminding you you're alive. And
Yeah. And that's can be a level of challenge in itself, is giving thanks to the pain. If the pain is a limiting factor for us taking action, getting the mind reprogrammed to thank you for this pain in my body. And that's, the power of healing that we talk a lot about here at Ordinary Pioneer, is how to work with the energy, seeing things as symbolic, as not just, oh, there's just this random pain in the body because you know, I did something bad, you know, I sinned or, you know, I abused my body, you know, for years or whatever it may be. But really, what is the significance, the spiritual significance of that pain, and how can we work with that to project us forward in spiritual development?
And sometimes you just buy a car that you spend a lot of time in that's not that comfortable.
Yeah. But you can't get a new car, though.
No.
Well, you can get a new car, but you can't get a new body. Although in this technology day and age,
well, that and
soul transfer.
can't get a new car. I'd be probably more likely to get a new body at this point.
Yeah, and that's like the thing where
there's
you go,
insurance for that.
You go into your priest or your minister, and you know, you say, oh, there's something wrong with me. I need you to fix this, and then you get there and like everything's fine. Do you ever have that happen when you go to the doctor and it's like the day
I've been having this horrible pain in my legs, but I don't know how to describe it to you because it's not there right now.
Because it's not there. Yeah.
It's like going to the mechanic with your car.
Yep.
It keeps making this squeaking noise.
So does the pain exist in the first place then? If it's a matter of the mind coming into this like hope, this resolution that, oh, you know, the pain is there, but now I'm getting help. Wait, the pain's not there anymore. You know, what is that?
It's like teaching yourself to hold your bladder until you get to the bathroom.
I used to be a pro at that when I was a kid. Needless to say, I may or may not have developed some UTIs later in life, but it doesn't work so well anymore. But my family still talks about taking trips, and I won't get out of the vehicle. I was playing on Game Boy. I couldn't enter my game. That was important.
Far more important than your physical health.
Yeah. So we've talked to many people here, and we've experienced ourselves with taking action and the challenge of that. And this feeling of being stuck, you know, and maybe you're in that spot right now in your journey, or you can resonate with this, but what would you say is that feeling of being stuck?
Well, I don't know, to kind of come out of the lightheartedness of this for a second, to realize that sometimes the deepest despair of being stuck is not realizing you're stuck. You think it just is the way it is, you know, and you tell yourself that, and you just find yourself repeating patterns at that point. And that it happens to everybody at certain points in their lives, and also it generally happens at certain points throughout the year. So as you move through, like, anticipation or hopefulness are both kind of the same energy. I think that we're hopeful to be achieving something, and the anticipation is real, and it causes a physical reaction inside of us. And then if we don't get exactly what we anticipated, it puts you into what can be a momentary or a long-term depression. And it really depends on how much you realize that you're not stuck versus telling yourself, well, what am I going to do now? This is just the way it is. There's always other solutions to problems. So
maybe the word stuck is in a human vocabulary versus a spiritual vocabulary. Vocabulary is I am in rest, or I am in contemplation, or I am in integration. I'm not stuck. You know, there's always progress being made, but it's the mind is the one that says, oh, you're stuck.
Right.
There's a wall in front of you that you can't move past. But if we change the language in itself and acknowledge ourselves as a creator of our universe and our life and our roles in this earth, then that changes the story to I am moving forward, and right now I am in a preparatory stage before the action is called into play.
Well, also, and something that a lot of people in this community can relate to is that we come here because we are searching, and searching can have a negative connotation, and it can also pertain to being stuck. But you're not going to look at your spiritual journey as a whole and go, well, I haven't found the answers I'm waiting for or looking for, so I'm stuck. And if you take that translated down to something simple or a minor thing that's happening in your life and say, well, it's over because I'm stuck in this spot now. You wouldn't do that in the grander scheme of things. So why do it in the microcosm?
Yeah.
The above versus the below, or the within versus the without.
Yeah. I'm going to emphasize a phrase that I hear a lot, and I've been guilty of saying a lot, is I just need to figure it out. I need to figure out what I'm supposed to do or what's wrong with me. But again, human vocabulary, perhaps there's no figuring out. And what I see too is a tendency for us to try to figure it out and to use the mind to heal the heart. And that's not how the heart works. That's not how the soul works. This is the lower mind is intended to help us discover the human experience, but not necessarily the spiritual experience. So if we are trying to figure it out, and maybe we're reading books or going on the internet and Googling, our physical ailments or whatever, what we put out into the universe to get to grab at information for is what we're going to get back. And so if we're doing that through the lower mind, trying to figure things out, we're going to get human responses back. Maybe that calling will be to change our living location, or eat differently, or do a recalibration of our friendships. But there's also work internally that needs to be done for these long-lasting effects.
Right. And like that's a very important thing, but what does that say? And I'm asking this in a very broad way, I guess, but what does it say for, if we're talking about physical health for an example, what does it say about the placebo effect when the mind can physically overcome? Where is the spiritual experience in that?
Yeah.
Then, so when you say the mind can alter the body, or I'm not saying you say, but one word to say, the mind can alter the body, where do we find the spiritual aspect of that? So you can read books on the laws of attraction and positivity and like attracting like and things like that. But getting into the more in-depth of the spirit of it, is it a realization of our own physical power that we're looking for, or is it something higher? Are we looking for something more in tune with the collective consciousness? But are we confusing those two things? I guess. I don't know. And
another way to say it too is, are we looking outside of ourselves versus inside of ourselves?
Right.
Realizing that inner power, which in a way prompted this topic of, we tend to look at things outside of ourselves, rely on getting validation from other people. And not to say that any of this is a negative thing. I'm not saying don't do this. We have to generate interdependency within community. But what is our intention for doing so? Are we wanting others to do the work for us? Are we avoiding connecting with our hearts, connecting with our emotions, connecting with our experiences because we are wanting somebody else to tell us what to do or to feel it for us? And there's nothing wrong with feeling with somebody, and that creates these really beautiful experiences, and healing sessions. But what is it that we are avoiding when we are looking outside of ourselves for the answer versus going within, coming to a place of acceptance of, this is where I'm at right now. What am I being called to do to work with it versus continue the pattern of seeking satisfaction outside of ourselves?
And I think what that boils down to is that when we try and avoid our own part in things, there's a multitude of reasons that people seek help from the outside. it's because they don't feel capable. And sometimes healing is simply us, for instance, sitting with somebody and telling them how capable they are. And that's all the action that can really need to be done in that moment. Is like, you don't come to us because we're some sort of witch doctors to,
Not publicly anyway.
Right. Well, the voodoo dolls are in the back. But we're not here to we're not here to heal you. We're here to guide you into your own healing. So to do that can be as simple as a conversation, or it can be a cooperative effort. And sometimes people need people to hold their hands through things because they don't feel safe and they don't feel capable. And there's nothing wrong with seeking that out. But knowing that it is within your own ability is more powerful than anything. And that's where I think the spiritual revelations come into things. Because no one, if we can go back to the placebo effect for a moment, you don't know it's working until the doctor says you've been taking a sugar pill this whole time.
Yeah.
So, but that was really your own capability. It's nothing different, only we don't disguise it as, a false drug or something like that.
And there's this spiritual paradox that's a part of that, where we enter into the spiritual experience in a sense alone, because it has to be our spirit to be the one to walk forward in this path. And also in realizing the unity that we are all working at this together, that this is a collective experience, we can experience that through confiding in somebody about our struggles, or asking for guidance, or for somebody to hold space for us as we're integrating. So it's this paradox of, we have to be the one to realize that. That's totally up to the individual, but we don't necessarily have to be alone in that we can reflect each other back to create these experiences with and for each other.
Well, yeah, because at the truth of it, our experiences are not so different, or very different, or at all different than everybody else that's coming. It's just that when you find a path that works for you, it works for you. And sometimes people seek that out, and there's a very strong importance on sharing that with other people, even if it doesn't end up being what works for them. But it shows possibility versus, it shows the connection to divinity can come in any form. And your own discovery is your own purpose. That's your way. That's your way, period, I suppose. Everybody's way is different. We all have, even if we were all like seeming automatons in a religious sect or something like that, there would still be nuanced differences between each person as an individual, and that's the creation of God there. That's the reality of divinity, is everything, even if it looks exactly the same, is slightly different. And it's a different experience for each person, it's a different experience for the collective, and it's a different experience for the divine. So.
Yeah, and you brought up religion, where that's, and we've had discussions within the community about how religion has been helpful and generating curiosity about spirituality. However, there are certain aspects of religious teachings and practices and doctrines that have separated us from ourselves, and that the dependency on others, confessing sins to a priest makes it, we are learning through that we need another person who has been blessed by God to receive this confession. And now we can look at that two different ways. One is, of the mindset of, I'm not able to create this experience for myself, and so I need to do this. I need to look outside of myself for somebody to give that blessing back to me. But then also what we can take from that on a positive side is the experience we create for ourselves, because we know we are blessed directly from the divine, that confessing our sins and taking accountability for and responsibility for our life, confessing that to another person can in itself be a spiritual experience that connects us directly to the divine. But we have to get past that, I need this person to do this for me, and recognize that all of that energy, all of that light, all of that divinity is already within us.
Right. And I think that's it. And for some people it works, and that's perfectly fine because it is their path. But realizing, I think that the root of everything is realizing your own power, your own divinity in everything, to facilitate your own understanding of what the universe is, of what the existence is. I don't want to say the universe as a solar aspect, because here it is just basic existence. And I don't know why I use the word basic either, because there's nothing basic about it.
No.
But finding our path in this chain reaction of events that happens, you can look at grand design and you can look at chaos theory, and both are equally valid in their own right. Mm-hmm. And each person has to determine what their path is going to be. Giving up the idea that someone else has to be there to create for you is, I think it can be a huge drawback to an understanding of true peace and love and joy in life. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, it can also be a great facilitator of love and joy and peace in life. So,
would you explain a little bit of, you mentioned chaos theory. Would you explain a little bit of that? Because it feels really fitting for this conversation.
Well, chaos theory in what aspect really comes into play, because it could be that, like, you take an action and then that action creates other situations where others react or other things react. I mean, simply exhaling creates the movement of the air in the room in a different direction depending on where your head is pointed, and that can then change what particles dust are kicked up in a space. I mean, that can go on forever, the butterfly effect aspect of it. Or I guess I could get into the Taoist aspect of the chaos, which is just opportunity, I suppose. Out of chaos, nothing can happen except an opportunity for something to happen. That's what chaos is. And then you can create easily through your process with that idea, whether it be spiritually, physically, or just your brain going to town on 8,000 different ideas. Mm-hmm. But I don't know, like, I guess, do you have something you want shared about chaos theory?
Well, I think you hit it, where the subtlety of the exhale creates ample change in itself, and that's a simple influence that we can have on our experience internally and externally. So I that seems to be what my spirit's getting at right now, is to focus on these subtle changes. So when when we're talking about taking action, it doesn't necessarily mean, okay, quit your job, move to a new city, leave your partner, do, like all these big things that sometimes we think that we need to create this big change in order to, experience opportunity within the theory of chaos. But what if we calmed our energy in a time when normally we weren't calm? What if we spoke up about the feelings that are rising within us in a moment when normally we don't talk about our feelings? What if we initiated a conversation or asked a question to somebody that maybe we wouldn't be connected in that moment to typically ask?
Or just say hello to a random person on
Oh my
the street.
goodness. Yeah, that's the whole concept of ordinary pioneer, is these ordinary circumstances that we create spills goodness into the world. Saying hello to somebody, with lightheartedness and joy and authenticity. Maybe that person's having a really crappy day, and my goodness, somebody noticed me, somebody said hi to me, and then they go home to their families, and then maybe they bring that joy to their families who, their kids go off to school, or, it just starts to spread from there. And so that's the power of being in the present moment, is we're able to tune into how can I best be utilized. And this isn't in itself is a prompting question to initiate action, is how can I best serve and be a part of this present moment right here? Is there anger within me that I need to release and feel something maybe a little bit differently? Is there an intrusive thought that keeps coming through, that what happens if I start focusing on something, rooted in gratitude or joy? Then how does that transform that intrusive thought, if, or maybe it releases it altogether? And then what does that create for us? It's so much opportunity.
So, I want to touch on the subtlety part of it, because a subtle action, and chaos theory gets a very negative connotation a lot of times because of the butterfly effect, where, a butterfly flaps its wings and then all of a sudden there's a hurricane across on the other side of the world or something. Okay, but also what's happening back where the butterfly is? He's flying. And then people see it, and then, it can go down many paths. But what seems subtle to us can create incredibly massive changes by a simple gesture, can create a global change. And we don't realize the potential of that a lot of the time. Because we don't look at the world and go, oh my gosh, this is happening here and this is happening here. What we tend to do is go, well, the world's in chaos. But that chaos is the opportunity of change. And we don't point fingers a lot of the time. Well, we do. In society, we point fingers in a million different directions, but no one realizes and goes, well, there's a hurricane that hit Florida, we'll say. Who's at fault? Who breathes at this time? You can't do that. But you can be the initiator of it. You can't find out where it began necessarily, but you can definitely initiate the beginning. And I think that that's a very important point for people to understand, is that it doesn't have to be hard or big or it can literally just be uncrossing your legs and recrossing them.
That created a lot of change. I don't know what.
You don't know what. We'll blame the next hurricane on you.
Shoot, I shouldn't have done that.
If we could see the chain reaction, can you imagine our minds?
Yeah.
And the isn't that what experience is the ups and downs of what is created from our moments in life? And if you tap into that, if you can pay attention on the most minute level of what you have done in this world to this point and how it unfolded, if you can tap into that in any way, even just smiling at somebody and seeing them smile back, then that's really the beginning of moving forward, I guess.
And even if you smile at someone and they don't smile back, letting your smile in itself be a gift, because who knows, when they walk away, maybe they're jarred and, oh, that person just smiled at me. Oh, I didn't smile back. Well, then I might as well smile to somebody else. And, you know, I mean, we don't know. You know, even if we give out love to somebody, you know, the shadow tells us that we need to receive love back in the way that we gave it out, because that's only fair. But what if we think of it as energy and pour that love out into the world, knowing that it's going exactly where it needs to go? And even though our senses may tell us that, oh, this person didn't receive it, or they don't look happy, or they reject it, or whatever it may be, there's so much more going on underneath the surface that we may not be aware of. And something interesting that I've been discovering through this work at Ordinary Pioneer is we've created our own mini world within the grand world. And I look at that very symbolically as, you know, what we're creating here, this loving, this welcoming, this safe environment, is then starting to infiltrate energetically out into the macro. And when sometimes I talk with people, and you know, I get jarred myself sometimes when I go out in the world and then somebody is seemingly acting in an unloving way, or they're grumpy or something, and then I'm like, wait, what? Like, not all light and love.
I'm not used to this.
Like you're taking life seriously. Okay, let me try to understand, because, you know, we're not used to doing that here. We're used to, you know, having this lighthearted sense about spirituality and growing and connecting and laughing and crying and all of the things. But something that I've started to see recently is our perception of the world is the most powerful perception, because when we view the world as dark and destructive and evil and, you know, wars and all these things and unsafe, then that is the world that we are going to experience internally. But if we start to work on the world internally and love ourselves first unconditionally and work to clear out the separation between us and the divine, then all of a sudden the world outside of us is that of peace, of togetherness, of connectedness. And I was speaking to somebody recently who was sharing, you know, some uncomfortable things that, you know, that they were perceiving in the world, and they were speaking of it as, well, this is how the world is. And I had to stop and realize, oh, wait, that's not my world. This is their perception, and it's not my perception. I'm going to share my perception, and my perception is the world is that of peace, and there's loving communities, and there's helpful people, and everything is working together of divine order, and I myself am at peace with that. And that just shifts. It doesn't take me out of this this mindset of everything is of working order and everything is of peace. Like we get to choose, I guess is what I'm saying, to engage negatively into the chaos or see everything as divine orchestration, but we have to be the one to choose to step into that perception.
Yeah, I mean the idea behind how we see things and how we affect things is that they go hand in hand. Mm-hmm. But I want to bring it back for a second to the topic of being stuck and thinking about kind of the opposite of what we're situationally, not grand scheme of things, but if your energy is that of being stuck, how do you think that affects everyone else you encounter? We can talk about the positive things that we can do in life, but we also need to recognize that we're on the hook for what we don't really recognize we're doing. And if you're in this place of the stuck energy, or you're angry, or you're grumpy, or anything that would be perceived as a shadow emotion, I mean, they're all valid ways of feeling, but do we want to share them? And if we do, then there's a darker situation going on there that needs to be addressed. But if you think about it as, say you're going out into public today and you're in a really bad mood, do you want to pass that on? Do you want to make that chain reaction? Do you want that to be the beginning of a chain reaction versus a positive energy being the beginning of a chain reaction? Both of them equally could go different ways. But when we pull it closer to us, the more we actually get to see the effects of it. And if we want positivity in our world around us, when we come to that perception, when we go out into the world, and as time passes, we see more peace and love and communal relations, and just seeing everybody as part of us, that has to start with our own energy. And I think that being the initiator through positivity, regardless of how it ends up in the macrocosm, the grand scheme of things, that's out of your control. I mean, the initial action is within your control, and that's it. And you got to let go after that point. So
I'll go off of what did you have another thought to?
I vaguely.
Well, please.
No.
Okay. I don't want to disrupt.
Go ahead.
Because that was beautiful. And I want to piggyback on that with, you had asked, do you want your stuck energy or stuck perception to go out into the environment outside of you? And in speaking practically about our situations, I also want to ask how much of our environment around us is affecting us or mirroring what's inside of us. And so if we're feeling stuck, that's a practical way that we can engage with the energy, is to look at the people around us. Are they also feeling stuck? Are we around vibrant, energetic, are we hanging out with people that we want to be like, that we want to join in that energy? Or are we with, the same vibration that we are in, that is of feeling stuck? And that's something that I had a friend share with me a while ago, is to hang out with people that, like, if you want to do something in life, like you want to be, a gymnast, hang out with gymnasts. Like, that's a simple way to take action. If you want to discover like-minded people, go hang out with like-minded people. It's like this practical thing of, well, what do I want? If I'm just sitting here trying, oh gosh, I'm gonna manifest this, like it's gonna happen, it's gonna come to me. Maybe part of that work is to get outside your comfort zone and actually seek out those opportunities, rather than this, idea of magnetic attraction, that everything's just going to come to us automatically.
Well, I also think that there's a huge misconception in the idea of attracting what we want, manifesting what we want, that there's no work involved in it, other than saying, I want that. And then
I've tried provided. That. It doesn't work.
Yeah, once you pass out of infancy, usually it doesn't work. Well, you always park in that weird side.
I do. I know it's there. It's available.
But yeah, the idea that we can just ask and we will receive. There's a whole lot of work that goes into achieving what you're trying to manifest. It doesn't mean it's hard work. It just means that you have to do it. whether it's hard or not, you have to do the work part of it. It's really simple. And I think that this comes back to an idea like it's a lot easier for us to judge others in situations when their energy isn't matching what we want it to match.
I've never done that.
Right. So you can sit there and you can be like,
You're talking about
man, they're
people,
so
yes.
negative.
Oh yeah, those people.
Their energy's so negative. What a jerk. And that can be the end of it for you, but you're not really exploring the greatness of existence at that point. You're just cutting off their existence altogether and not recognizing their existence within your own existence and your existence within their existence. And I think that that's the deepest lesson about judgment, is that it closes doors that need to be open so that you can peek inside from time to time and make sure the house isn't on fire.
That's a good thing to check. And you mentioned with work, something that I've found is that if I think it's going to be hard work, then it manifests as hard work. If I am present and in a state of gratitude, creation simply unfolds and I get to watch it. And I noticed that when I first started Ordinary Pioneer, it was a lot of work. It was a lot of teaching classes by myself and doing sessions by myself and, getting furniture and all of these things. But then once I started to realize that this whole space was a manifestation of my own healing journey and I was a part of this experience and needed to be a part of this experience, then I started to ease up a little bit and see, well, what happens if I surrender to what is and trust that the bills will be paid, trust that the right people will come, trust that the wrong people will leave, so to speak, and that everything's going to work out absolutely perfectly. Then how's my experience going to be of the world around me? And then I started to see the creation of Ordinary Pioneer be breathed into existence. It was, now people will say to me, oh, this must have been such hard work, doing this and doing this. And I'm like, no, it just kind of happens. And I'm in this present moment. And, when we were painting and we had some alterations of the space, it was a joy, oh, how wonderful it is to have this space to paint. And here I am being present. Never mind, my shoulders sore. It's only temporary. Everything unfolded beautifully because my mind wasn't thinking, well, what about this? What about this? It was totally present with the experience, and that in itself made everything easy.
Well, I just want to come back to the point in that conversation, your little diatribe there.
Yeah.
Where you said, and the wrong people leave, and made this gesture towards me.
I didn't wave at you. We'll cut that part out.
No, we won't. No, we won't. But I kind of want to move forward here to the topic of getting off the toilet, which is, what reasons do we have? Like we've talked about how we get up in the morning, I think that made sense. So why do we prevent ourselves at certain times versus others? And I want to talk mostly about the importance of just getting up. There's no other option, you have to do it. Yeah. So just do it. Why hem and haw about it, I guess.
I mean, you probably have this experience too, but sometimes it happens when I'm actually going somewhere outside of here to go to yoga, and I'm like, oh man, I got my car, especially in the winter time, oh man, I got to bundle up, I don't want to go.
Car starter.
I do. I'm blessed. But then when I get there and then I have the experience of yoga, it is absolutely beautiful, and then I'm done, oh boy, life is great. But getting there in itself can be a challenge. But that's my mind saying, here's all these limitations, that's preventing me from comfortably getting from point A to point B. But what if I started operating differently and was like, oh boy, I get to go to yoga today. I know on the other side of that, I'm going to feel absolutely great. Never mind how I feel now. I get to see certain people that I enjoy being around. Like, if we're focused on that, then the experience in itself leading up to it, the journey, so to speak, is more pleasant than if it was this mind of creating limitations of, oh man, once I get off the toilet, then, I gotta, I don't know.
Wipe and flush and wash my hands. So what do you think creates that disconnect though? Why do we, is it because, I would hate to say it's because we're being very present.
Yeah.
Like, oh, these blankets are just so good. What does it matter?
I think we, in a psychotic way, appreciate the challenge and we're comfortable with the challenge. I think we appreciate seeing chaos as a negative thing because that gives us permission to not move anywhere. It's like I had this pattern when I was sick, years ago. And well, I'll take it back to my childhood. I was sick a lot as a childhood. And then I was like, oh boy, I'm sick. That means I don't have to go to school, and that was a positive thing. So then I learned.
The Price is Right.
Yeah. And Martha Stewart and all the infomercials. We didn't have cable, of course. Miracle Blades. I don't know if those still exist.
Never even heard of them. Didn't know they ever existed.
I'll send you the link.
No thanks.
But I used to welcome being sick because I didn't want to go to school. And so that in itself became ingrained in me where it was, if I was sick, that means, oh, I don't have to go to work or I don't have to engage in a life that I'm not fully happy with or do this thing that I'm not really happy with. But what if we moved away from that and started to create and lay out our life in a way that is pleasing to us? If there's something in our life that we're not happy about, we can complain about it, oh, this thing, or I have to make money, I have to do this, do this job, go see these people that I don't want to be around, And we talk about like it's the complaining aspect of it. But what would life be like if we started to transform these parts that are no longer aligned with us, create change, and then lay our life out in a way where everything in life is a positive reflection of what's inside of us versus the unhealed parts of ourselves. And I think when we talk to people, and I'm sure some of you are listening are in this situation where, we're in these jobs that we don't like, but we have to make money. And that's such a limiting mindset. And this is something that I've made many huge life changes. So, of course, I know everything about this topic.
Yeah, she learned how to be violent.
I am taking karate. Yeah. In making big life changes, the only part of it that really sucked for me was what my mind was telling me about that change. And when I started to welcome change, and that was my prayer of, let everything be transformed within me to create a world of peace within me so then I can then be used to spread peace outside of myself, and surrendered my own human egoic will over to the divine will, then life just started to reorchestrate itself. And I realized at some point that it's not about necessarily making choices, it's following these spiritual breadcrumbs to walk into the life that we are desiring. But the problem is, coming back to my original point, is we are comfortable in that negative, chaotic mindset because that's what we're used to, and that's what society tells us is you have to work to make money. You have to, and I'm not saying quit your job today. That's not what I'm saying. I'll put that in the disclosure. But
that was a joke.
you know, are we surrounded in an environment that has this negative mindset of, you know, life's meant to suck, show up, go to work, come home, not live?
Well, that's the stuck mentality.
That's the stuck mentality, yeah.
My question is, who's to say that you make your life completely aligned, but there's always going to be things you prefer more than other things, and you're still there. You're still like,
Yeah.
gotta get up
Yeah.
and do that thing I love to do. Is that a humanistic trait that will always be there? Or can we find a way
That's a
beyond
brilliant
that?
question. Because I've realized a state of discontentment within me. And so I'll answer that, of course, from the spiritual aspect, which is what we're here to talk about, is discontentment can have light attributes and shadow attributes. The shadow attributes is a state of complaining, always wanting things to be different, not pleased in the present moment. The light side of discontentment drives us forward into creating change in our lives to hold us accountable for that growth. So if we are, you know, life sucks, hate my job, blah, 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 you know, even if we, you know, quit our last job, like, oh, this is gonna be the best job ever, then we get there and we realize it's essentially the same kind of people, the same kind of environment.
Again?
Oh man. It is. And we could talk about archetypes. That could be another topic. Briefly, if we think the grass is greener on the other side, but we haven't yet healed those archetypal patterns in our life, like our relationship with our supervisor or our boss or whoever is ahead of us, we're going to manifest those same people in jobs moving forward. But if we start to look at discontentment from the light attributes of that, we can be in the state of surrender, allowing our spirit to open us up to any and all possibilities and engage in the growth process versus that stuck mentality of nothing ever works out for me.
Right.
What do you think? I answered that. I want to know your thoughts, experiences, and stuff.
I don't know. I think that we can look at it from a stuck mentality, or we can look at it from a humanistic approach to it, just a trait of being a three-dimensional being on this planet, that there's always going to be a preference. And there's nothing necessarily wrong with that. But I think that no matter how we look at knowing how to improve our lives, I guess, what it really boils down to is just taking the action. I mean, it's the discovery itself. So we tend to fix words to things that are so often used that they have really no meaning to us anymore. And so literally just going through a thesaurus sometimes can help you
Expand our vocabulary.
right.
Yeah.
Because you can think of a word like discovery versus get out of bed. You know, there's a huge difference in the energy of those things. And I think not training ourselves, I don't like that really idea, but just adjusting your mindset in the slightest way can make so much of a difference. And sometimes it boils down to the sounds that come out of our mouth that we use to communicate to each other that things are okay or things are dangerous or things are, I mean, that's the purpose of this coming out.
These sounds.
Even the bleh means something to everybody.
So I'll bring up karma with that. And I did a writing on this in our newsletter. I don't know when you're watching this, but when was that? November 2023 or December? I don't know. Anyways,
I was just naming months.
Oh, you didn't have any idea. Okay, well, never mind then. But talking about karma, and so karma means action, and karma in itself is a neutral part of the spiritual experience, but the intention we bring to it can shift the chaos in one way or another way to keep it the language of neutrality. And so if we if we take action with we'll say negative intention, like I'm leaving this job because I can't stand my boss, or they don't treat me well or whatever. Not to say like you want to be in a place that's treated well, but it's the victim mentality that is associated with that action. Then the karma is going to sway in that direction of the victim, where you're going to continue to attract to you other situations that make you feel like a victim. But if we heal that victim inside of ourselves and choose to leave our work because we've developed this really strong passion for being of service in the world, or to maybe from being a bank teller to a mechanic, or so, we got really passionate about this thing, then that's a positive intention that will be very fruitful for us on the other side. And so we can start to look at the timelines and perceive ahead in time as to, let's say I leave my job, how do I want to leave my job? Do I want to leave it as the victim or as the creator? And then that's going to split off in two different directions. But as you shared with me,
at least
too,
for the initial point.
Well, yeah. So that's what I was getting to is you say, what do you say? There's like three paths, or like, but then everything.
Wait, are you talking about the primordial chaos?
Well, like you've explained to me before, correct me if I get this wrong, but how, we're going from point A to point B, but then how we get there, that's where that's where the free will comes in.
Yeah, there's an infinite amount of choice.
Right. But there's something ordained that is going to lead us into a specific trajectory, because that's something that we have, inserted into our incarnation.
Yeah. We want to look at it linearly.
Yeah.
But the reality is that you can end up, I can't do it on the table and have you see it.
We need a whiteboard. I told you.
I know. I told you that we need a whiteboard. But the path is going to meander no matter what. It's not a straight line. And it doesn't matter what happens necessarily along the way, because you're always going to end up at the same place. Mm-hmm. And that conversation can get really dark really quick when we talk about life and death, but we can talk about it in a circular pattern as well, of every end is a beginning and every beginning is an end. And so it would be a series of loops at that point, because we have all these situations in our lives that start and then finish, and then something else starts and then they finish. And sometimes we have 80 things going on at once that all started at different times, and they're all going to finish at different times, or some of them will finish together, and maybe all of them will finish together. And ultimately, they all will finish together, but then they'll start again. Mm-hmm. And it's hard to think of the world as not a great adventure unless you look at the map as a straight line. Because if you look at the map as a straight line, that's where society gets its grasp on you. Mm-hmm. That's where society says, just keep doing this, keep going. Maybe you'll make some more money and then you'll keep going. But you're just walking, trudging forward. You don't even have to look anymore. You can close your eyes, And then there's all these people with you, packing in with you and carrying you forward. But to realize that you're an individual on your own series of loops and swerves and dead ends and all sorts of things. If the dead end, that's such a harsh word for something that's just like, oh, I got here, but it doesn't lead anywhere else, so I'll go back or I'll go a different direction. It doesn't matter. Guide yourself by the stars. you're lost in the woods.
Yeah.
And that's fine. But I guess maybe I missed your question.
You answered it, and to start to wrap up our conversation, that maybe a message that we leave ourselves with is that we can't screw this up, and so if we're going from point A to point B and there's all of these different pathways to get there, the whole point of this conversation is to take action, take chances, get messy, just do something to move your path forward. Because even if it's a decision that when you get there, you realize, oh, maybe another decision would have brought about, a more comfortable resolution, then you're not going backwards because you have that knowledge. And then if you're presented with a similar situation, you can choose differently that time and just kind of like Plinko start to, shift left, in all these different directions to eventually get down and win $1,000, $10,000 from Bob Barker, God rest his soul.
No, Drew Carey.
Oh my gosh, no. No. We don't talk about that.
Why? He's
that
from
reality.
your hometown, isn't he?
He is. He's from Cleveland, which I am also from.
He's from Parma.
Yes, he is. Cleveland rocks. Apparently, I don't know. Anyways, please make any comments. If you have any questions or anything you want to share, what resonated with you, we'd love to hear how this, if it did inspire you at all, and what are you learning and what are you growing? Because we'd love to make this more of a community conversation, and so we can incorporate anything that you share and any comments into the next recording that we do. So the plan is to generally do these every week and have these available for you. So if you miss out on this one, then go to the latest one and continue making your questions, and we'll be sure to answer those in the coming ones.
I do want to close by saying the most important statement of the podcast is,
go on.
There are absolutely zero excuses to not taking action.
Yeah.
Because even saying I'm not going to do anything is an action.
Mm-hmm.
And so just, if your feet hurt, get out of bed.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if I can do it, anybody can do it.
Yes, thank you for that. Well, I'd like to end this with a brief pause of integration. So if you'd like to join me, you don't have to do anything fancy. We won't make this a big to-do, but just simply close your eyes and bring your awareness inward and allow your spirit to speak through this message. What is it that in this moment we are being called to take action for? What is it that is driving us into our spiritual enlightenment, our spiritual understanding, and what needs to shift within us in order to be able to create that experience from us and for us? Thank you for joining us on this not so serious spirituality podcast.
Seriously.
We were gonna get those Groucho Marx glasses. We'll have those next time for you. We're gonna do the whole thing like that. Many blessings. Thank you so much for joining us. Namaste.